Let's bring in Benjamin Anthony, an IDF combat veteran who served in Gaza following the October 7th terror attack. Benjamin, take us inside the mind of the typical IDF soldier who just spent the past 2 years trying to get the hostages home. What are they feeling this morning?
First of all, good to be with you. Thank you very much for having me. And with regard to the typical mindset of an Israel Defense Forces soldier, I can tell you as someone who served alongside them in Gaza, who had the privilege of looking on as they displayed heroism night after night, day after day, that all that powered them was the obligation that they felt to give all that they could, all that they were, all that they had at their disposal in order to bring these hostages home. It escorted them from the moment they set foot into the Gaza Strip, and it will escort them until the very moment they set themselves around the perimeter and return home, in many cases of the soldiers, once the hostages are returned, assuming that this deal does go through. And I can tell everybody that all soldiers will recognize that the 20-point term sheet put forward under the leadership of President Donald Trump, regardless of how anybody wishes to spin it, is nothing more or less than the total surrender and capitulation of Hamas. They've been decimated, they've been overcome and wiped out in every engagement that we've had with them, and they have realized finally that the seizing, stealing and abducting of our people will never serve as an asset to them, but will only be a liability. And all of the soldiers will be thanking President Trump.
Yesterday, President Trump said getting the hostages home is a complicated process. And he said, I'd rather not tell you what you have to do to get them. You've been in Gaza, you know the conditions. Do you believe Hamas knows where all of the hostages are? And do you believe that the 20 are, in fact, still alive?
So I do believe that the 20 are still alive. I do escort this entire deal with a sense of very cautious optimism and sustained skepticism as to the word of Hamas. I don't believe that any deal is done until it's done. Though, of course, if we receive the hostages as scheduled, I will take a backseat to no one in terms of the celebration that I'll feel in my heart and in my head. Having said all of that, there is a difficulty with the hostage repatriation, those who are deceased, because apart from anything else, some of them are held not just by Hamas, but also by Islamic Jihad, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. We may see some sort of agreement and disagreement between those two terror organizations, but I believe in time, as we've shown to this point, the IDF will demonstrate that we will not leave any of these hostages behind, neither the living nor the deceased.
A bit of a logistical question here, but the plan, the 20-point plan, calls for the rebuilding of Gaza, but it also calls for the 450 miles, and that's an estimate, it could be more, of terror tunnels to be destroyed. Necessary but complicated. How do you view the ability to do something like that in Gaza?
I think that the details of what's now started to be discussed as the second part of this ceasefire agreement. So the first part is the return of the hostages and the release of the prisoners that Israel holds inside our jails. Many of them, of course, hardened criminals and terrorists of the worst kind. I want to make a point about that. But there is much talk about the second half of the deal, handling issues such as the one you're asking about. And to be perfectly frank, the details are not yet clear. They will clear in the fullness of time. They'll become clear, rather. And I believe that it will involve a multinational force that is going to be dedicated to the ongoing search for the hostages who are deceased in the case that we are required to do so, but also to the demilitarizing of Hamas. The details of that are also not clear. And, of course, the complete elimination of the terror tunnel network. And I just want to say one thing to all listeners and viewers. If ever there was a simple gauge for the difference between Israeli society and the society that is there inside the Gaza Strip, it would be this. Look who we want home. Look who we are fighting to bring home. 20 innocent living hostages, including soldiers who were arrayed in a purely defensive posture inside the borders of the state of Israel, plus our dead innocent civilians who died as the result of the attack on October the 7th. Who does Hamas want home? They want killers, terrorists, murderers of the worst possible kind. And not only do they want them released from Israeli prisons, they want them within their societies, the equivalent of Americans saying that they want, Jeffrey Dahmer to come and live within their neighborhood. It's a dreadful society. It is powered by too much hate, and it's absolutely imperative that the second part of the deal, that which deals with the demilitarization and the complete destruction of Hamas, as a governing force and as a threat to the states of Israel must also be implemented. Nothing short of that must be the end result of this.
Hey, Benjamin, we have some breaking news that we want to get to and get your reaction to it, but we're just learning that President Trump has not received the Nobel Peace Prize. What is your reaction to that, the president not receiving this award?
I think that, quite frankly, the gift that President Trump has bestowed not only upon Israelis, but I believe in the near term, potentially upon the region, actually goes above and beyond anything that a Nobel Peace Prize could go any way to describing, could go any way to defining. And I actually think that there should be a new prize that is coined. I think that there ought to be a Donald J. Trump Peace Prize, and that should be founded in memory of this tremendous feat of the president and should go on year after year and be bestowed upon the true peacemakers. The Nobel Prize Committee, their inability to recognize this feat by President Trump speaks volumes for just how detached they are. And incidentally, all of the negotiations that we saw around this peace treaty that President Trump brought about, you see how it completely excluded the old world, if you like. It completely excluded Macron, Keir Starmer. It completely excluded the European Union. All of those individuals who ran to vote in favor of establishing a Palestinian state and rewarding terror, they have been sidelined completely, totally and utterly, rightly so. The president's achievements, in my opinion, transcend anything that the Nobel Peace Prize would confer upon him, and they absolutely trump, pun intended, anything that President Obama undertook, which quite frankly was nothing, in order to be awarded his Nobel Prize. It's a topsy-turvy world we live in. At least there's a good leader of the free world at the helm.
And to be abundantly clear, the nominations for this Nobel Prize needed to be in by January 31st. So again, based upon everything that we've seen over the course of the last 9 months leading up to now, Donald Trump could win the award next year. But to your point on Barack Obama, it didn't stop the Nobel Committee from awarding it to him before he had really done anything. If you had to get the nomination in by January 31st, that is certainly
always
the
exceptions
case.
to be made.
Yeah.
IDF combat veteran.
Should have been changed from the changed from the Nobel Prize to the No Deeds Prize in that particular case.
Benjamin Anthony, thank you for your insight. Invaluable this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.